Teddy, and you're listening to Christian Worth and Brent Finnegan from Virginia on Two Broads Talking Politics.
Hi, this is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics. Today I am joined by two candidates for the Virginia House of Delegates race here in 2019. We have Christian Worth, who is running in House District 24. Hi, Christian.
Hi.
And we're joined by Brent Finnegan, who is running in House District 26. Hi, Brent.
Hi, thanks for having us on the podcast.
So could you both start by telling us just a little bit about yourselves, why you are running for the House of Delegates, and a little bit about your background? Christian, would you like to start?
Sure. My name is Christian Worth, and I live in Lexington, Virginia. I am running in a district that goes all the way to the border with West Virginia, up through the suburbs of Lynchburg. And I am running because after a couple of years of volunteering with other campaigns, being out knocking on doors, talking to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of folks, I realized that we really needed someone to run on basic kitchen table issues and get back to what would bring investment to our part of the Commonwealth.
I'm running, this is now the second time, actually, for both Christian and myself. Christian you ran in a special election.
That's correct.
Last year.
In December.
And I ran in 2017. So Virginia is one of the few states that has the off-year elections. You know, I've been involved in my community for the last 14 years, and, you know, I started to get more involved about a year before the election of Donald Trump and stayed involved and engaged, and really had a focus on, you know, helping the rural part of the district. I grew up in a small town and in the district that I'm running in. And, you know, I've seen, you know, the decline of a lot of the rural communities in our part of the Shenandoah Valley. And, you know, we need to stand up for that, and make sure that the people who live in our districts are getting the same fair treatment that people everywhere else in Virginia are getting, and make sure that we're getting fair funding for our schools and, you know, livable wages, and also, you know, a livable planet for future generations.
Yeah. So I think, you know, a lot of people sort of think that, you know, Democrats win the urban areas and Republicans win the rural areas. How do you run as a Democrat in a rural area and make sure that you're connecting with voters there?
It's really interesting that we hear that a lot, but when I'm asked that question, my answer is that you don't run any differently. You still have to get out and meet voters where they are. You have to go out on the doors, make the phone calls. And so the really short version is you get in a car and you drive. You drive hundreds and hundreds of miles to get through these expansive districts to meet as many people as you can. We have mile-long driveways. We have a lot of fences. You know, we're going onto farms, up mountains, hollers, down hollers. But it takes a lot more time. It's a lot more intensive. Our voter outreach program really has to take into account a lot of things that you wouldn't in an urban area.
Yeah, and I think at the doors too, you know, this may be true whether it's urban, suburban, or rural, but, you know, I think for me, a big part of canvassing and why I love it so much is just getting out on the doors and talking to folks. And instead of me trying to sell them on something, you know, vote for me, I just say, you know, what issues are important to you? And, you know, you hear from folks that are facing some really big struggles. And in a lot of these cases, this is the first time not only that a Democrat has knocked on their door, the first time that anyone has knocked on their door. A lot of these communities are just the Republican vote is taken for granted, and so they don't try. My opponent this year, it's the same delegate I ran against in 2017. You know, he was challenged during a special election, and the Democrats lost pretty badly that year, and then they never tried again. So he's just kind of he walks. In every election, he doesn't run. And so we're actually, challenging them in every district in the Shenandoah Valley, and we're making them earn their, every single vote. Nothing is taken for granted. So, and making our delegates pay attention to the issues that matter to people in their district.
So when you're out talking to people, what are some of the issues that are really concerning them? And have you noticed any difference, from the last time you ran to now? Is it pretty much the same issues? Are people concerned about different things?
I mean, in my district, in District 26, the Alice report, the United Way came out with, a national report in many states across the country. ALICE stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, and Employed. And what that report showed is, in my district, what I have sort of intuitively known all along is that many, many more families are struggling than the headlines in the newspapers would let on. The incumbent that I'm running against, he says, the economy's doing pretty well. The stock market's doing good. I'm doing good. Business, we're the number one state for business. So, everything's fine. And the Alice report showed that in District 26, about half of the people living in my district are either living in the below the poverty line, or they're barely scraping by, barely able to pay their bills, living paycheck to paycheck. And that plays out again and again and again at the doors when I'm out talking to folks in my community. It's, they don't say I have economic anxiety. They say, we just had a second kid. My dad was just diagnosed with Alzheimer's. He's moving in. My brother-in-law is living on the couch. We don't know what we're going to do. And there's no affordable childcare, and there's no affordable elder care. And what are we supposed to do? Those are the kinds of stories that I hear over and over and over again.
I would agree completely with Brent that when you go in and you're having that conversation, it's at that person's door at their home, and they open up about what they're worried about, what keeps them up at night. You hear some very compelling stories about worries about how do you pay your bills, worries about health care. I am running in a district where there is no hospital where you can deliver a baby. If you are pregnant and you go into labor, you're going to have to go in an ambulance 45 minutes or an hour away on an interstate where backups and accidents are common. So when you are facing that sort of challenge and you look at bringing economic investment to an area, it makes it very difficult. Another thing that I know that Brent and I have in common, and many of our other candidates that we're communicating with, is that we don't have internet access. Rural broadband is abysmal. And it doesn't matter what the maps say, what the utilities say they've installed. We even have spots where our cell phones don't work at all. So people are isolated. And it's a huge issue because broadband is not a luxury. It's a utility in this world. It's crucial for investment. It's critical for children. I have children in the high school, one who just started college, and your homework is all online. And there are children who can't keep up in school because they have no way to do their homework unless their parents want to drive them to the nearest McDonald's and sit in the parking lot and try to catch that signal.
So I know that, Brent, you mentioned earlier clean energy, and Christian, you have that on your website as well. Can we talk some about that and what the rural communities, how you look at clean energy in rural communities and both the impact that climate change might have, but also how that can really be a boon for these communities?
Sure. In my district, there's a couple of, frac gas pipelines that are running through the western part of the state. Neither one of those pipelines is cutting through my district. However, we have, it's a long story. I won't get into it, but we have a publicly regulated monopoly, energy monopoly in Virginia that has kind of run the political game in both parties for a very long time. And, a lot of the districts on the western part of the state and elsewhere in the state have really started standing up to Dominion Energy and saying, we're not going to continue to, let you run the tables. And so really, what that comes down to is, there's these talking points that talk about jobs, pipeline jobs, building the pipeline. But those are temporary jobs. And I think when you look at, Rockingham County, certainly, and Harrisonburg in my district, we're sort of leading the way in terms of, what the local communities have done with solar energy. That creates jobs. Those are jobs that can continue long after any sort of building project is finished. And, so when it comes to clean energy, at least speaking for my district, and I think, Christian and I are both speaking for ourselves, our districts are similar in certain ways, but, we're running on our own platforms and we have, each district is different. So, I'm only speaking for myself here, but, I think, there's a real need to have sustainable jobs, green energy jobs, that we can create at home in the Shenandoah Valley that will continue to pay out in terms of, one job leads to the next, and that those jobs are sustainable. So, that's certainly, at least in my district. And the other thing about the pipeline really is it's not cutting through my district, but if it were, I would want the other counties and the other districts to have my back if it were cutting through my property. And so it's really a case in a lot of cases of rural solidarity, saying we understand that this is affecting your community and we're standing with you in opposition to these, frac gas pipelines.
I have clean energy in my platform and have even when I ran in the special election, which was a month long back in November, December of last year. I have it in there for a slightly different reason. We have agriculture as our number one industry in my district. And so our small family farms are really hurting. A lot of them are having to diversify. And I believe that the option to have solar energy and to use fields that don't need to be in production for those types of income generating projects is a real opportunity for our farmers. However, even within my district, it varies by county what kind of support and how receptive folks have been to that. We are pretty mountainous, so wind is not really as much in the discussion, but solar presents some real genuine opportunities, especially if we can do something when we're elected to change the caps on the ability of folks who generate that electricity to be able to sell it back, which in turn, of course, lowers all of our bills. So when I talk about clean energy, particularly to an audience that has agricultural interests, I talk about it as an opportunity and about how we can help our family farms be on the cutting edge, and that really is the best way to try to do something about this climate crisis that we are facing. Farmers are the original scientists. They are tracking data every day. They track the weather. They have to track the soil. They have to track the health of the animals. The water is critically important. So we really believe that this is something that we need to be partners in and work together, not just to benefit us economically, but also environmentally.
Yeah. And just to follow up on that, the largest private industry in Virginia is agriculture. And, I'm representing part of a county that is the largest agricultural producing county in Virginia. So really, if there's flooding, if there's adverse weather that affects people's farms, their ability to grow food, and, a lot of these folks don't have a lot of recourse.
And I would just add, too, that when Brent was speaking about the pipelines, I'm actually running in a district where the proposed path of the pipeline comes straight through one of my counties. And it has become even a bipartisan issue to fight that pipeline. The damage that will be done when those access roads are created and that land is stripped bare and that pipe is laid down, it can never be undone. That land will lose value. Those farms will lose value. And it is something that we are committed to continue to fight at a state level as much as possible, because it's affecting and endangering an entire way of life for this area. So it's very much a big issue here.
Absolutely.
So I've noticed in a few things that you've talked about, it sounds like there are a group of you who are all running in rural districts who are running, obviously your own campaigns and your own issues, but are also working collaboratively. Is this something that's new to the area for Democrats to be doing?
we believe it's new in the country as far as we're aware of. This is it's a coalition of rural candidates that came together as a result of just our sincere desire to run as professional and as thorough and hard-running campaigns as we possibly could. And we tended to kind of meet up together at different trainings and events earlier in the year, earlier in the season, and really just came together and bonded over our need to be able to share resources, information. A lot of us are running campaigns where maybe our only paid staff is our campaign manager, if we have a campaign manager. But one of the things that I love about working in this group is we're all very, very much individuals. And as you've heard already, are really looking at running on platforms. They're not formulas. They really are tailored to the district and to what we've heard in our communities. But we can come together and work on what we have in common and really help each other. So I'll let Brent talk a little bit more about what we're doing. We call it Rural Ground Game.
Yeah, rural ground game really is, it's what we have kind of come up with. It has its roots or DNA that you can kind of trace back at least to the Kaine campaign. Tim Kaine, senator from Virginia who ran last year, and a lot of the staff who worked on that campaign then are now working on campaigns in rural Virginia. So they may have been a field organizer last year and now they're managing a campaign for House of Delegates for the state house races. And really, what we know, and, this for better, for worse, the state party puts their resources where they think, what districts are, quote unquote, the most winnable. And so, we have to kind of be scrappy and fend for ourselves to some degree and share resources. And really, I think what we've done with Rural Ground Game is sharing resources, sharing knowledge. There's institutional knowledge among all of the candidates that are running. It started with 7 and now there are 10 candidates in this coalition where, we have weekly calls that Christian has kind of organized, and no one is really in charge of the group per se. But again, we're a coalition of candidates that, like we do in rural Virginia, as has been the case for hundreds of years, people come together and share resources because we don't have a lot, and we try and do the most we can with the limited resources that we have. And so, really, that's what's so exciting to me about Rural Ground Game is sharing those resources, sharing that knowledge, and also just having other candidates that you can talk to and say, I had a really rough day at the doors today. I got yelled at by, a Trump supporter, and, or, sharing stories of, I had this really meaningful conversation, or I'm really struggling with this or that we have this sort of support network among candidates. And not only candidates, one thing that I think is really unique about Rural Ground Game is it's being driven by campaign staff as much as it is by candidates. So it's a really unique model that I haven't seen really anywhere else.
And what we're hoping to do is to not hoard this knowledge, is to learn from it and to document and to look ahead into 2020 for how could this help other communities, other states, other candidates, especially those that are separated by such geographic distance. We are really using innovative, cutting-edge technology to the best that we can and to the best that it will work in districts like ours. But as I mentioned earlier, we don't have rural broadband down to the last mile. So we have to be innovative, and we can't neglect the really, truly important work of being out on the doors, meeting people at their homes, at community events. And so our voter outreach programs are critical. And when you're talking about a district that takes 2.5, 3 hours plus to drive across, your voter outreach in terms of where you're sending your volunteers has to be really carefully planned. And so what Rural Ground Game is allowing us to do is to take that institutional knowledge, take our experience. Most of us have been campaign volunteers as I was, for example, but to take that and to use that and to craft, we call them turfs or walk packets, or really in our case, mostly driving packets. We have very few walkable areas, but to do those in such a way that we're maximizing our ability to reach voters, to get new information. People do come and go in the area, so we're trying to track that, and to use all this in the smartest way possible, in the most effective way possible for our campaigns. And we're excited to share it one day. Right now we're focused, but we hope this will help other campaigns.
Yeah, I can think of a lot of states where I've talked to candidates who are in fairly rural areas that could definitely use that kind of help.
Yeah, and I don't think Virginia is unique in that, the party apparatus in the state is going to focus on, the urban and suburban areas that they either know they can win or think they can win. And oftentimes that's to the detriment of districts that, in my district, in District 26, someone ran in a special election. Because it was a special election, it got a lot of state money. So the state did put resources into that race in 2010. When the results came back that, the Democrat that ran got, 29.9% of the vote, not even 30%, I think, the party kind of was like, it's a waste of time. And so no one ran in my district up until 2017. When I ran, I got 45% of the vote. And I think, Christian, when you ran in the special election, you did much better than a lot of people thought.
The last Democrat who ran in our House district had, I believe, achieved 29% of the vote, and I received just over 40% of the vote, which was even an increase over some of Senator Tim Kaine's numbers in the general election that had just been barely a month before. So we're excited as candidates in these rural districts because we believe there is momentum, and we believe that our message is getting out there, and that if we can reach enough voters and, quite frankly, fundraise enough money to really fuel the campaigns that we need to run, that we can do some pretty amazing things, and that our voters and our Democratic volunteers and our Democrats here are strong and want to see change and want to see something happen, and they are deserving of attention. They are deserving of someone out there listening to them. So part of what we're doing with Rural Ground Game is fundraising using a tandem Act Blue site, and anyone who goes to that link can look at all of our names, look up our websites, can donate to individual campaigns or spread a donation among all of us. We really want everyone to win. All 10 of us, we're all sort of each other's cheerleaders, even though we may disagree on some issues or some aspects of policy. It doesn't mean we can't all still support each other.
Yeah. If anyone's listening and wants to check it out, it's simply an Act Blue account. It's not a political action committee. It's just an Act Blue account that splits donations between, all of 10 candidates. And it's actblue.com/donate/RGG for Rural Ground Game. So that's actblue.com/donate/RGG.
And we will put the link up on our website as well so people can find that. So I wanted to point out to listeners the importance of these races. So the Virginia House of Delegates right now has 51 Republicans and 49 Democrats. And it was very, 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 very close last time around. The 51st Republican won by a name drawn out of a bowl. So, and there were a number of things that didn't happen in the legislature over this past session. The Equal Rights Amendment didn't come up for a vote. And I believe on the last day of the session, there was going to be a gun violence prevention debate that basically just got cut off. So can you talk some about what it would mean collectively for Democrats to be able to regain control of the House of Delegates?
Well, it would mean that a lot of initiatives that are supported by the majority of Virginians would actually reach the floor for a vote. So what you just spoke about, the ERA in particular, it was one person who kept that from coming to a full vote. And yet we know from polls that I believe it's over 70% of Virginians regardless of party, would have supported the ERA. So what happens is without a majority, then these things just get completely blocked. And I would add, though, it's not just achieving a majority. We are running because we believe that that majority needs to include strong rural advocates, and that is what is also truly critical. Our legislature also passed an incredible incentive to be paid to Amazon, a $1 billion corporation that pays no taxes, to bring jobs to not our part of the Commonwealth. And we see that here in this part and think that if a fraction of the money, I believe it's $22,000 per job created, a couple of $100 of that for every single job. How many millions dollars, Brent? Remind me.
I think over 750 is what the state.
$750 million. That, to me, when I talk to people about it, I say it shouldn't be an either or. It should be, if we're going to provide incentives for Amazon, let's also do something for our part of the Commonwealth. Without rural broadband, for example, our folks can't work remotely and help Amazon. They can't win any of those jobs. They couldn't even apply for them. And what a missed opportunity that is, because people don't live in our districts because they want to see their neighbor. They don't live in our districts because they want to have an hour-long drive to go 2 miles to work. They live in our districts because they want to have the peace and the beauty and the scenery and the community that we have and that we can offer. And I think that with a majority that includes rural Democrats like us representing our voters, our constituents, that we can see truly great progress in the Commonwealth of the Commonwealth.
Yeah, and also, I think on election night, in Virginia, so a lot of folks elsewhere in the country probably aren't paying attention to Virginia politics, and I don't blame you. But I will tell you that, when you tune in to CNN or MSNBC on the evening of November 5th, you will be seeing election results roll in from the state of Virginia. And you will be seeing, people will be looking to Virginia for signs of hope for 2020. And they want to know, if we can pull off some wins in rural Virginia, then that gives hope to people that live in rural parts of the country all across the country. And this is something, so we're trying something new. We're trying something different with rural ground game. But, really, at the end of the day, we're running to get elected so that we can actually help the people of our district. I think the real irony of giving $750 million to Amazon to build right next to Washington, D.C. is that there are people in both of our districts that can't access Amazon from their house because they don't have the internet. So, it's this, dumping tons of money in one part of the state and then another part of the state that already is, living in poverty or, struggling to pay their bills. You're just making that disparity that much worse. And so, we need policies at the state level that will actually help rural communities. You can't legislate community, but you can certainly pass legislation that aids and strengthens communities and local economies so that people can, make a decent living, make a living wage, and, provide for their families in rural Virginia.
I think we also can't understate the importance of these state offices, of these legislative offices. I know a lot of folks watch the presidential debates and are donating to presidential candidates, but if we're going to have success in 2020, we need this investment in races in Virginia, and in particular our rural races, because we really are not just the bellwether for the country, but in our races, we're the bellwether for the success of Democrats in rural areas. And all you have to do is look back to 2016 to recognize how important that is.
Virginia is not the only state that has an election in the off year, but Virginia is the only state in the country that is a sort of purple state, a swing state, where the legislature certainly is up for grabs. And it depends on, how much people want to, support that. That'll determine the outcome on November 5th of 2019.
Well, I'm super excited about what you're doing. I think it's going to be a really good model for a lot of other people, but I'm also really hopeful that it'll make a huge difference this November. So besides the Act Blue account, are there other things people can do to help your campaigns?
We have a lot of volunteers who helped in my special election with the postcards. Postcards are really popular these days. And in a rural district like both of ours, where we're running, postcards are a way for us to reach voters that are inaccessible. We can't get up their driveways or they're gated off. And I think that is one way people can volunteer. The Postcards for VA is one organization, and I know that there are others, but we also need to send out the mailers that one would expect of a candidate to send out. Those are critical for us. So really, I really hate to say it, but it's about funding our ability to do what we know will work in our districts. So if someone wants to write postcards, that's wonderful. But if they can do that and check out our Act Blue page and donate real funds and real money, then the truth is we will know how to take those funds and convert that into the strongest voter outreach program that we can on the ground. Because really it is about that direct voter to candidate outreach.
It's in the name, rural ground game. It's about boots on the ground, talking to people face to face, forming those relationships. And, like I said, Christian ran last year. I ran 2 years ago. We're in this for the long haul. We are not going to see changes in, not only the Virginia's General Assembly, but across the country. As many people know, there's a democracy problem with the U.S. Senate. Until we can find ways to win in these rural states and rural districts, we are not going to, we have to find a way to do that. And so that's what Rural Ground Game is all about.
All right. Is there anything else that you would like to make sure that we talk about?
I guess there is one thing I would want to add in there when we're talking about what we've observed over past election cycles here in rural Virginia. I do want to say that Senator Kaine really got it, and we need to give him credit for recognizing the importance of showing up. He came to many events in our district in the 24th. He was frequently here supporting of candidate who's running now for delegate in 2018. And folks noticed that. Just being present, it made all the difference. So I think that if any potential presidential candidates are listening, then they might want to take note of the fact that we could use some attention and some love here in rural Virginia, that we are an important race as a Commonwealth this fall, but especially don't forget that we're out here. We've got good Democrats, and we've got people who are looking for change and looking for someone who really actually cares and wants to hear what they have to say.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, hopefully there's lots of presidential candidates listening. But if any of you are out there, make sure you get to Virginia.
Well, the other thing I would add too is, there's been talk of it recently, but over the last 3 years, we realized, we lost 1,000 legislative seats across the country. This is, it's kind of, you just replaced the roof on your house and your basement is riddled with termites. Mm-hmm. This is the foundation. The state legislatures are the foundation. They're the ones that actually draw the congressional districts. And now that we know the Supreme Court is not going to step in and say this is unconstitutional, we have got to pay attention to what's happening at the state level in every single state. And in 2019, we're singularly focused on General Assembly in Virginia.
Is the General Assembly what draws the congressional maps and the assembly maps in Virginia?
Yes, that is correct.
So it does have tie-in to, federal elections and, after the census, those seats are going to change. Some states might lose a congressional representative. Some states might gain congressional representatives. And it's going to be really, really important to stay laser focused on, fair districts and make sure that we're not going to get drawn out, because we've taken our eye off the ball when it comes to state legislatures and the courts. And we have a lot of catching up to do.
All right. Well, Christian and Brent, thank you so much for coming on and talking to me today. This is really exciting work that you're doing, and I hope that everyone will pay attention, will in fact go and donate money, and we will put that link up on our website, and we can really make a change and make sure that more rural Democrats are being elected everywhere, and especially this fall in Virginia.
And thank you so much. We really appreciate your reaching out, and we're excited to talk about what we're doing here in Virginia, and we're excited for November 5th.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics. Our theme song is called Are You Listening? Off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Wethlin and was created for use by this podcast.